The morning I found 40 strangers drinking champagne in my restaurant, I was elbow deep in a clogged grease trap behind the kitchen. That's where I was. Not at some industry conference in Nashville like my brother thought, not schmoozing with investors or attending the James Beard Foundation dinner my publicist had penciled in. I was on my knees in the alley behind Harlow's, my 3-year-old fine dining restaurant in Charleston, South Carolina, wearing a pair of latex gloves that had seen better days because our grease trap had backed up at 7 in the morning and our plumber wasn't answering his phone. That's the part my brother never understood about what I do. He thinks owning a restaurant means you wear a nice outfit and drift between tables accepting compliments. He has never once seen me regroup a bathroom tile, retrain a line cook at 11 p.m., or argue with a fish supplier over the phone while simultaneously plating a tasting menu. He sees the chandeliers and the write-ups in Southern Living and the reservation wait list that runs 6 weeks out. He has never once seen the grease trap. My name is Nora Calloway. I'm 31. I opened Harlow's 2 months after my 28th birthday with a business loan, my grandmother's cast iron skillet collection, and a lease on a building that my landlord described as having good bones, which is real estate code for needs everything. I've worked 16-hour days for 3 years to build something I'm genuinely proud of. The kind of place where the food is serious but the atmosphere isn't precious. Where locals celebrate anniversaries and first dates and graduations. And they come back again and again because they feel like it belongs to them a little. My brother, on the other hand, has spent the last decade being handsome and charming and very good at spending money that isn't his. His name is Donovan. He's 29, 2 years younger than me, and we are, in the bluntest possible terms, nothing alike. I work. He performs. I plan. He improvises. I have a spreadsheet for every month of the next 3 years. Donovan has a rotating cast of get-rich schemes and a smile that has gotten him out of more trouble than it should have. Our parents have always adored him. The baby. The boy. The one with the easy laugh and the good hair. I love my brother. I want to say that clearly, because what comes next might make it seem like I don't. But I do. I just stopped letting that love be weaponized against me. The Nashville trip had been planned for weeks. A culinary symposium. The kind of thing that matters for the restaurant's long-term partnerships, supplier relationships, the serious business of keeping Harlow's competitive. I'd briefed my general manager, locked the private dining room, arranged coverage for every shift. My assistant had sent calendar holds to the whole team. I would be gone Thursday through Sunday. The restaurant would run on its regular schedule. Nothing unusual. Nothing special. Then my uncle called Thursday morning at 6 a.m. about a family matter I won't get into here, and I drove back to Charleston instead of boarding my flight. I didn't call anyone to say I was coming home. I just came home, changed into work clothes because I always go straight to the restaurant first, and that's how I ended up in the alley with the grease trap. I heard them before I saw them. Music. Something jazzy and expensive sounding, drifting from the direction of the private dining room, then laughter. The specific kind of laughter that happens when someone has had 2 glasses of champagne before noon. I pulled off my gloves, walked to the back kitchen door, and stood there for a moment, just listening. My sous chef, Owen, appeared from around the corner carrying a sheet tray and nearly dropped it when he saw me. Chef. He said it the way you say a word when you're hoping it'll disappear if you're very still. Owen. I kept my voice even. What is happening in my private dining room? He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I got an email that said you approved. Show me later. Right now, just tell me who's in there. He swallowed. Your brother. And a woman. And maybe 30, 40 people? It started as a brunch. It's become something else. I walked past him into the kitchen. The kitchen at Harlow's is my favorite room in the world. Stainless steel and organized chaos, the whole place smelling of stock and butter, and whatever the morning prep team was working on. 3 of my line cooks were at their stations, all of whom looked at me with the particular expression of people who know they're about to witness something significant. Keep working, I said, and walked through to the service hallway. The private dining room at Harlow's seats 40. It has its own entrance, its own bar cart, its own playlist system, its own everything. I rent it out for corporate dinners, private parties, rehearsal dinners. It runs $1,200 minimum for a 4-hour block, not including food and beverage, which is priced separately. It is not free. It has never been free. Nothing in this building is free. I stood in the hallway outside the frosted glass door and listened. Donovan's voice, smooth and carrying. And obviously we'll do the rehearsal dinner here too, so you'll get a full sense of the space before the wedding. A woman's voice, older, measured. The kind of voice that has never once doubted its own authority. The kitchen does its own catering, you said? No outside vendors? We prefer to keep it in-house, Donovan said. Quality control. It's part of what makes Harlow's special. He said we. I pushed open the door. The room had been dressed. Not the standard Harlow setup. Someone had added floral arrangements that weren't ours. Tall white and ivory things in crystal vases that must have cost several $100s each. The tables were pushed into a long banquet configuration with white linens. There were champagne flutes everywhere, multiple open bottles visible, and platters of food from our kitchen that I had not authorized. At the head of the long table sat a woman in her early 60s wearing a bone-colored blazer and the expression of someone who has never waited in a line. Beside her was a man the same age, quieter, watching. Around them, 40 people in cocktail-adjacent brunch attire, and at the far end, Donovan, in a blazer I'd never seen. His arm around a woman I recognized. Simone, his girlfriend of 8 months. Both of them turning to look at me as I walked in. I was wearing my work clothes, jeans, my Harlow staff Henley in dark navy, work clogs, and I had grease trap residue on my forearm that I hadn't fully noticed until right now. Oh, Donovan said. He recovered almost instantly. That's one thing about my brother. He recovers fast. He actually laughed, easy and light. That's just our kitchen manager. She keeps everything running behind the scenes. Don't mind her. The woman in the bone blazer looked at me the way you look at a minor inconvenience. Her eyes did a single, uninterested pass from my clogs to my face, and then back to Donovan. Doesn't she knock? She said. She usually does, Donovan said pleasantly. Nora, can you give us a few minutes? We're in the middle of something. I looked at him for a long moment. There are two versions of what I wanted to do right then. Version 1 involved announcing immediately and loudly that I owned the restaurant, that he had no authority here, and watching 40 strangers witness a family implosion over the brunch menu. Version 2 involved something colder, more deliberate. My brother was genuinely counting on me to be embarrassed. He was counting on me to feel out of place in my own building because I was wearing a staff shirt and he was wearing a blazer, and there were 40 people in the room watching. He thought that the social geometry of the situation would silence me, that I'd take the path of least resistance and slip back into the kitchen and address this quietly later, privately, in a way that let him spin it. So I smiled at him, a real smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes, and I said, "Sure, I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything." And I left. He thought he'd won. I could tell by the way his shoulders dropped half an inch when I walked out. I went to find my general manager, Phoebe. Phoebe has managed Harlow's for 2 years. She's 35, methodical, deeply unshakable under normal circumstances. I found her in the office with her laptop open, and she stood up the moment she saw my face. "Tell me everything," I said. She told me everything. The email had come in on Tuesday, 2 days after I'd left for what was supposed to be Nashville. It came from an address that was one character off from mine, noracalloway.harlow instead of Nora Calloway at Harlow. And it read, in my approximate tone and format, that I was authorizing my brother Donovan to use the private dining room this Saturday for a family engagement brunch, that food and beverage costs should be accommodated as a family courtesy, and that staff should cooperate fully with his requests as if they were my own. Phoebe had tried to call me to confirm. The call had gone to voicemail. She'd sent a follow-up text. Donovan, who clearly had been watching for this, had texted her back from a number she didn't have saved, saying he was with me, and I was in a meeting but confirming the authorization. She'd had no reason to doubt it. "The food orders," I said. She turned the laptop toward me. 40 guests, full brunch service, smoked salmon boards, crab cake Benedict, house-made biscuits with country ham, a cheese program that took my cheese guy 3 days to curate, a custom mimosa bar with fresh squeezed juice, and 4 bottles from our reserve wine list, including a 2018 Burgundy that we price at $340 on the menu. Flowers, sourced by Donovan but delivered to our address and handled by our staff. Custom printed menus with Harlow's branding. Use of our private playlist system. Table setup and breakdown by our team. Private valet coordination through our usual vendor. I did the math. Food and beverage costs to the restaurant, approximately $4,200. Full retail value of the event, $8,600, which is what we'd have charged any other client, not including the 2018 Burgundy, which Donovan had apparently pulled from the reserve rack himself after telling whoever opened the cellar door that it was on my list. It was not on any list. The cellar door, I said. Who opened it? Phoebe looked genuinely pained. He said you texted him the code. I haven't texted anyone anything. I'd been driving back from family business at 6 in the morning. The last thing I was thinking about was the cellar code. Close out the tabs on everything else today, I said. Don't touch the private dining room. Don't say anything to him. I need an hour. She nodded. She didn't ask questions. That's why Phoebe has a job. I went back to the kitchen, found Owen, and asked him to tell me everything he'd observed since the setup began. He told me. While he talked, I pulled up our security system on my phone. Harlow's has 9 cameras, front entrance, back entrance, bar, main dining, private dining room, cellar entrance, kitchen, office, and parking. I had full remote access. I found the private dining room feed from the last 2 hours and watched. Donovan was holding court the way he always does, that generous, expansive energy that makes people feel included and important. Simone was beside him, glowing, showing her ring to various guests. She's 27 and, as far as I can tell, has no idea what Donovan is actually like. She just sees the blazer and the ease and the way he makes everyone laugh. The woman in the bone blazer. I could see from this angle that she had the posture of someone who has always been the most important person in the room, was talking with Donovan about the wedding. I switched to the audio. Our system doesn't have great audio pickup in the private dining room, but near the main table, it's passable. So, the ceremony would be at St. Michael's, Donovan was saying, and then the reception here. Harlow's has done large events before. We can seat up to 200 with the full space. We can. My daughter mentioned it was family-owned, the woman said. Are your parents involved in the operations? It's been in the family for generations, Donovan said, without missing a beat. But I'm the one who handles the business side day to day. My sister is more of a silent partner. She stays in the background. Silent partner, in the background. 3 years, 6-day weeks. The grease trap at 7 in the morning. The man beside her. Simone's father, I assumed, spoke for the first time. What's the revenue model? Is the restaurant profitable? Donovan's response was perfectly smooth. Very. We've had 4 consecutive years of growth. Our margins are better than the industry average because we keep sourcing local and keep the staffing lean. I can walk you through the numbers after brunch if you'd like. He was going to walk them through my numbers. Numbers he doesn't know. Numbers he's never seen. I turned off the audio and sat in the quiet of the office for a moment. Here's what I understood. Donovan wasn't just throwing an unauthorized party in my restaurant. He was using the party to audition. Simone's family was clearly evaluating him, his stability, his ambitions, his ability to provide, and he had decided the best possible audition prop was my restaurant. My reputation. My 3 years of work. He was wrapping himself in Harlow's the way you'd borrow a car you don't own to impress someone on a first date. The difference is that a car is a car. Harlow's is my life. I pulled out the portable point-of-sale unit from the office safe, the one we use for off-site catering, and put it in the front pocket of my Henley. Then I walked back to the kitchen and found Owen again. In about 45 minutes, I said, I'm going to need you to do something for me. Can you plate the chocolate lava cakes? All 40 portions. Full service. Make it look incredible. He blinked. Right now, in 45 minutes. I want them to be mid-dessert when I come back in. He looked at me for a moment. Are you going to do something? I'm going to close out a tab, I said. I went and washed my hands and arms properly. I changed into the clean chef's coat I keep in my office for events. It's white, embroidered on the chest, Harlow's, and below it, executive chef and owner. I keep my hair back. I didn't change my clogs. The clogs stay. Then I sat in the office and waited, watching the security feed on my phone. At 12:47 p.m., Owen's team began delivering dessert. I watched the chocolate lava cakes go out, watched the room react with genuine pleasure, Watched Donovan beam at the head of the table like he'd personally created every element of what they were experiencing. Simone's mother. I'd pieced together from context that her name was probably the most important thing in the room to her, was smiling for the first time. She said something to her husband. He nodded. Donovan lifted his glass. I walked back to the private dining room and pushed open the door. The chocolate lava cakes were half finished. The champagne had been refilled recently. The room smelled of good food and flowers and the particular warmth of a party going well. 40 people looked at me. I didn't look at all 40 of them. I walked directly to the head of the table, where Simone's mother was sitting, and I introduced myself. I'm Nora Calloway, I said. I'm the executive chef and the owner of Harlow's. I apologize for not greeting you properly when I arrived earlier. I was dealing with a maintenance issue. The silence in the room was the same kind of silence that happens right after someone drops a glass. Everything suspended. Simone's mother looked at me. Then she looked at Donovan. Donovan's jaw had gone very still. He had the particular frozen look of someone who understands they are watching a controlled explosion. The owner, she said. Not a question. Yes, ma'am. I kept my tone pleasant and direct. I've owned Harlow since 2022. I'm also the executive chef of record. The embroidered coat is admittedly a little on the nose, but it comes in handy. One of the guests near the middle of the table laughed before she could stop herself. Then got very quiet. I pulled the point-of-sale unit from my pocket and set it gently on the table in front of Donovan. I want to be very straightforward, I said. I wasn't in Nashville this weekend, which means the email authorizing this event wasn't actually sent by me. I've reviewed our communication logs. The address used was a spoofed account, not my actual business email. That's wire fraud, technically, if anyone wanted to press the issue. Donovan opened his mouth. I'm not done, I said, same pleasant tone. The food and beverage service for this event has a market value of $8,600. The wine pulled from our reserve cellar adds another $1,100. Total comes to $9,700, which I'd like settled now. Cash, card, or Venmo are all fine. This is a family event, Donovan started. You committed wire fraud to throw a party in a business you don't own, I said. You told these people you manage this restaurant. You told them I'm a silent partner. You offered to show them our financials, which you've never seen. I'm being very generous by starting with the invoice instead of the police report. Simone had gone pale. Donovan, what is she? She's exaggerating. He used a spoofed email to impersonate me to my own staff, I said to Simone, and my voice was not unkind. I actually felt terrible for her in that moment. I can show you the email if you'd like to see it. I can show you the staff text that followed. Your fiancé planned this down to the details. He just didn't plan on me coming home early. Simone's mother had not looked away from Donovan since I'd said the word owner. Her face had done something quiet and conclusive, the way a door closes rather than slams. Donovan, she said. One word. He tried the smile. The easy, generous, I can fix this smile that has worked on people his whole life. Vivian, I can explain. You said this was your family's restaurant. It is. Technically the family. You said you ran the business side. He stopped talking. Vivienne. I had a name now, reached into her handbag and produced a card. She didn't hand it to Donovan. She set it on the table near the POS unit and looked at me. Run the card, she said, full amount. Vivienne, you don't have to, Simone started. I know I don't have to. Her voice was absolutely level. But your fiancé used my family's name to attend an event on fraudulent premises, and I will not have it said that we walked out without settling what's owed. She looked at me. That is the correct amount? $9,700? I'll round down to $9,000 even, I said, as a courtesy. She almost smiled. Don't do that. Charge the $9,700. I want the receipt. I ran the card. Transaction approved in 3 seconds. I printed the receipt from the small Bluetooth printer Phoebe had quietly appeared with at the door, because Phoebe is exceptional, and handed it to Vivian, who folded it and put it in her handbag with the finality of someone closing a chapter. Then she stood up. The room, which had been barely breathing for the last 7 minutes, seemed to recalibrate. We're leaving, Vivian said to the room. And it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. People began folding their napkins. The party had ended. Simone. Her daughter stood. Vivienne looked at Donovan for a long moment. I suggest you use the rest of your afternoon to think carefully about the impression you've made. On me, on my husband, and on your fiancé. She turned to me. Your food is exceptional, she said. The burgundy is special, she said. The burgundy, especially. Thank you. I'll send you home with a bottle, an authorized one. She nodded once, and then she walked out, and the rest of the guests followed in a quiet, rapid stream. Donovan didn't move. The room emptied. Phoebe appeared and began clearing without being asked, her team efficient and silent as a tide going out. The floral arrangements, Donovan's flowers, not ours, sat in their crystal vases looking expensive and irrelevant. The custom-printed menus with Harlow's branding, which he'd had made without asking, lay abandoned between half-eaten lava cakes. When the room was just the two of us, my brother looked at me. You didn't have to do it like that, he said. His voice was quiet. Not angry, which I'd been expecting. Something sadder than that. You created a fraudulent email, I said. You impersonated me to my own staff. You told the family whose opinion matters to Simone's future that you run my business. You were going to show them my financial records? I picked up one of the abandoned menu cards. You had these printed. You even got the logo right. I just needed them to see the place, to see what I could offer her. You don't have anything to offer her that's actually yours, Donovan. He flinched. I didn't enjoy saying it. I want to be clear about that. There was no satisfaction in watching him flinch, but there was something that I can only describe as clarity. The same feeling I get when I've nailed a sauce after 6 attempts. The feeling of something finally being exactly right. I've bailed you out 3 times, I said. The loan when your food truck fell through. The intro to my distributor contact that you burned in 4 months. The investor dinner I brought you into, where you pitched them a concept that was essentially this restaurant with your name on it. I set the menu card down. I kept thinking you'd find something that was actually yours, that one day you'd call me with something you'd built. Instead, you just kept trying to borrow what I built. You make it look easy, he said. I work every single day to make it look easy. That's not the same thing. Silence. I walked to the door and then stopped. I'm not pressing charges, I said. Not because you don't deserve it. Because Simone doesn't deserve the fallout, and honestly, neither do Mom and Dad. But you're not welcome at Harlow's for the foreseeable future. Not as a guest, not for family events, not to borrow the space for anything. If you contact my staff directly for any reason, I'll reconsider the charges. He didn't say anything. I hope you figure out what's actually yours, I said. I genuinely do, but I'm not going to keep subsidizing the search. I left the room and walked back through the kitchen, past Owen, who was breaking down the dessert station and had clearly overheard enough to be very carefully not making eye contact. Good work on the lava cakes, I said. Yes, chef, he said to the counter. Phoebe found me in the office an hour later. Vivienne Hartwell left her card at the host stand, she said. Wrote a note on the back. She handed it to me. On the back of a heavy cream business card, exceptional meal. Please reach out if you do private events for corporate. VH, Vivienne Hartwell, it turned out, was the chair of the board of a regional hospital network whose annual gala had been held at the same Hilton ballroom for 11 consecutive years. I know this because I looked her up and then I called the number on the card and we had a 20-minute conversation that ended with a site visit scheduled for the following Tuesday. We booked the gala. $80,000. That's not the point of the story, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel like a very tidy ending. The harder part is what happened after. My parents called, of course. My mother first, then my father, then my mother again. A version of the same conversation repeated. How could I do that to Donovan, in front of Simone's family, in front of everyone? He was embarrassed. He was devastated. He needed support, not humiliation. I listened to each call the same way, fully, without interrupting. And then I said the same thing each time. He created a fraudulent email and used it to take from my business. If he'd asked me, the answer would have been no, and he knew that, which is why he didn't ask. My mother's response, on the 3rd call, was to tell me I'd always been too cold, too focused on the business, too unwilling to let family be family. Letting family be family, I said, is not the same as letting family take from me. She hung up. I sat with that for a while. It's one thing to understand intellectually that enabling and loving are not the same thing. It's another to feel it in your chest when your mother hangs up the phone. But here's what I kept coming back to. Donovan had never once shown up for me. Not when I was in culinary school working doubles to pay tuition. Not when I was renovating this building on a shoestring. Not when I had my first bad review and cried in this office for an hour before pulling myself together and writing a response. He was never there for any of that. He showed up for the finished product, for the part that was useful to him, for the part he could borrow. You can love someone and still refuse to be their resource. That's something I had to learn. It's been 5 months now. The restaurant is doing well. Better than well, actually. The Hartwell Gala came together like I knew it would, and Vivienne, who is both intimidating and, I've learned, quietly hilarious, has referred us to 2 other organizations since then. We're booked out 10 weeks. Donovan and Simone's engagement is, from what I understand, still on. Whether Vivienne Hartwell's impression of him that Saturday has done permanent damage, or whether Simone's love for him is strong enough to hold, is not my business. I hope it works out for her. I mean that. She seems like a person who is trying very hard to believe in someone, and I know how exhausting that is. I do not attend family dinners at the moment. My parents have not formally cut contact, but the calls have slowed. We are in a kind of extended pause that feels, on most days, more like peace than loss. My brother has not reached out. I don't know if he's angry or ashamed or both, or something I don't have a name for. I've stopped trying to anticipate his inner life. That was always part of the problem. I spent so many years trying to understand what Donovan needed, and very little time asking what I needed him to be. I needed him to be honest. I needed him to be something of his own. I needed him to look at what I'd created and feel proud instead of covetous. He wasn't able to do that. That's not my fault, and it's not something I can fix by letting him borrow my restaurant. Last week, I was back in the alley at 7 in the morning, different issue this time. A refrigeration line that had started condensating in a way our HVAC guy said was not ideal, and which I was fairly sure was going to become a crisis if I didn't deal with it before the dinner service. I was in my work clothes, kneeling on the concrete, trying to get a good angle with a flashlight, when Owen came out the back door and handed me a coffee. "You know we could call someone," he said. "I know," I said. "Seems like an owner thing. Not a chef thing." "I'm both," I said. He leaned against the door frame and was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, I've worked for 4 restaurateurs. You're the only one who knows where everything is." I took a sip of the coffee and looked at the condensation problem and thought about Donovan in his blazer, walking strangers through numbers he'd never seen, offering to give away something he'd never built. There's a specific kind of freedom in knowing exactly what you own. Not in the legal sense, although that matters, but in the deeper sense, knowing what you put in. Knowing what it cost. Knowing that when you walk through the door in the morning, every single thing inside that building is there because you made it happen. Nobody gave me Harlow's. Nobody borrowed it either. Not anymore. So here's where I want to hear from you, because I've been sitting with this for 5 months and I still go back and forth on one thing. Option A, should I have handled it privately? Found him first, taken him to the office, given him the chance to end the party on his own terms before Vivienne Hartwell ever knew anything was wrong? Kept it in the family, the way my mother keeps saying I should have? Or option B, was the moment I walked back in wearing that chef's coat the exact right move? Was letting it unfold in front of the people he was trying to impress the only way to make it real? The only way to make sure he couldn't spin it later into some version where I was the one who overreacted? I read every comment. I answer when I can. And honestly, after 5 months of my mother's voicemails, I'm genuinely curious what you think. Because from where I'm standing, in my kitchen, in my restaurant, in something that is completely and entirely mine, I think I did the right thing. But you tell me. There's a thing that happens when you build something from nothing. People who didn't help you build it start to feel like they have a stake in it anyway. Not because they contributed, they didn't. But because they watched, because they were adjacent, because somewhere along the way, proximity got confused with ownership. Donovan watched me build Harlow's. He watched me take out the loan and sign the lease and sand the floors myself on a weekend in February when I couldn't afford to hire it done. He watched me cry after the first bad review and get up the next morning anyway. He watched all of that, and what he took from it wasn't respect. It was inventory. He looked at what I'd created and saw something he could use. That's the thing about people who don't build. They don't understand what building costs. They see the finished product and think the hard part is over. They don't see the grease trap at 7 in the morning. They don't see the supplier calls and the staffing crises and the nights you lie awake recalculating margins because food costs moved again. They see the chandeliers and the linen tablecloths and the reservation wait list and they think, that could work for me. Donovan didn't steal from me because he's a bad person. I've spent a lot of time sitting with that, and I genuinely believe it. He's not malicious. He's just someone who never learned that wanting something doesn't entitle you to it. That was something our parents never taught him, because they spent 29 years making sure he never had to learn it. Every time he fell short, there was a net. Every time he overreached, someone caught him. I was part of that net for years, and I told myself it was love. It was love. It was also damage, because every time I caught him, I took away one more chance for him to understand what consequences feel like. When I walked back into that private dining room in my chef's coat, I wasn't trying to humiliate him. I know that's not how it looked. I know Vivian Hartwell and 40 guests watched my brother get taken apart in a room full of people he'd been trying to impress, and that's not a comfortable thing to witness. But I had a choice. Protect his image one more time, or protect the thing I'd spent 3 years building. And I realized I had been making that choice wrong for a long time. There's a version of integrity that's quiet and private. And then there's a version that has to be public, because the thing that was taken was public. He didn't take from me in a back office. He dressed up my restaurant, put his name on my menus, told strangers he ran my business. The correction had to happen in the same room where the lie did. That's not cruelty, that's proportion. What I keep coming back to is this. The people in your life who are worth keeping are the ones who want you to succeed at your own thing. Not at their version of your thing. Not at their version of your thing. Not at a thing they can borrow from. Your actual thing, even when it has nothing to do with them. Donovan never wanted that for me. He wanted what I'd built to reflect on him, and when it didn't, he took a shortcut. I don't know what happens with him and Simone. I don't know what Vivian Hartwell said to her daughter on the drive home that afternoon. What I know is that every decision Donovan made that Saturday was a decision I didn't make for him. He chose the spoofed email. He chose the blazer and the story about being a silent partner. He chose to offer up my financials to people he'd just met. Those choices had consequences, and for maybe the first time in his life, I didn't step in front of them. That's not coldness. That's the most honest thing I've ever done for him.